All right. Good morning, guys. Hopefully, this is coming through loud and clear for you all. I just wanted to do a quick stream this morning. I'm going to share with you guys a track that I'm working on right now, and I don't actually know where this is going to land. This is one of those rare tracks that just kind of came to me. Usually, when I'm producing music, it's always for a library or for an opportunity or a TV show. This was one where I just kind of woke up with this melody, this idea, and I just started putting some stuff down. And I want to just stress to you guys how important it is that once in a while, you do need to get out of sort of production beast mode where you're just producing tons of production tracks and TV film library tracks, and really also don't neglect your own personal creative whatever it is. Like, there might be some music that you have in you that has nothing to do with TV, has nothing to do with libraries. And I think once in a while I don't think it's just like a luxury. I think it's a necessity. You do need to tap into that from time to time. And I don't usually make a point to do it. I probably should. But when I get these inspirational kind of I just call them like, they're like basically a whole song that I start hearing in my head. I usually put it together, and sometimes it kind of evolves into a full track, and other times it just stays as a sketch and I don't really complete it. But this one really just kind of naturally started happening and working, and it just kind of easily all started falling together. And this took me about a day and a half, 2 days to kind of complete where I am right now. I'm not entirely done with it yet, but I'm really happy with where it is. But as I was going through it, I'm realizing, this can be kind of useful, I think, for a lot of you guys that might want to learn my production approach. Because even though I don't know if this is going to land in a TV film sort of a place, I think that I'm still following all of the same golden rules of production music in terms of creating forward flow, always having interesting transitions, not repeating and not copying and pasting my way through the track, and adding new elements as we go through, and really telling a unique and very specific emotional story throughout this piece. So I'm going to basically walk you guys. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of every single plugin that I'm using and all that kind of stuff, but I'm going to give you guys sort of a track walkthrough in this video, sort of an overall view of what I did with this track, how I'm making it evolve, and basically what my thought process was as I was making all these changes and kind of sort of built this whole thing out. In Sync Academy, I do have my producing, mixing, and mastering course, which is basically 20 hours of me doing pretty much this, but I actually walk you through from having nothing on my screen to having the completed track mixed and mastered with all the alt mixes and stems and all that kind of stuff. So that is not what I'm going to be doing with this video. So I do have that in Sync Academy. This one is just to show you guys kind of where my head is at these days, the music that I'm kind of, I don't know, resonating with for some reason, and just my current approach for it, so you guys can see. And hopefully this just inspires you and gets you excited to make your own music, because I really want you guys to do that, and I don't want you to be too distracted by this for your weekend, obviously. But hopefully this is a nice little boost for you. So while we're waiting for more people to show up, I'm gonna go ahead and play through the track here so you guys can take a listen. And once we're done, I'll come back and we'll dissect it. So that's where it is now. There's a couple things I'm hearing as I just play it back. If you guys don't do that, I strongly recommend you do that. That you should dig into your track, produce tons of stuff, have fun with it. But then what I like to do is I will bounce basically when I'm feeling like, okay, this is a good solid start to the track, or at least it's a full completed picture of kind of where I'm going. I'll bounce it. I'll put it on my phone. I'll take the dog for a walk and I'll just listen to it on repeat 3 or 4 times. And while I'm out walking around doing something completely different out of my studio, I start hearing things that I didn't hear inside of the studio. So I think it's a weird thing that our brains need to sort of get a new environment to reflect and listen to our music, and then you'll start to notice there's some things that you didn't even catch inside of it. And I'm actually doing that right now, and I was actually making some notes about what I want to change when I go forward. So a couple of questions about the drums. Yes, these are Steven Slate drums, pretty much my go-to drums. Love his drums. Now, the one thing that's different about these drums, though, that I usually don't do is actually I programmed these drums. I performed them, rather. Let me correct that. I usually program drums. This is one of the first tracks where I actually plugged in my TD50 drums and actually jammed along to this. I did do a little bit of quantizing and some editing here and there once I wanted to finalize sort of what's going on. But the reason why these drums probably do feel a lot more lifelike than usual is because I actually played these things. These are actually real drums, real drum patterns that I performed. So let me go ahead and solo those out so you guys can check them out. Let's start with the verse. The biggest reason why those are sounding realistic, yes, the samples are definitely there, but you guys notice these little ghost notes in the verse, especially with the snare. I'll just solo the snare out. They call those ghost notes these tiny little hits that are sort of breaking up. They're subdividing the beat as we play through the drums. You guys hear and feel how that just adds that sort of touch of realism to it. Those are those things that it takes a little bit extra time and to really get a nice groove going on, especially if you're not a drummer, you have to experiment with where you want to go. Usually those ghost notes are going to fall somewhere in a 16th note pattern. So you might have to experiment with it. But obviously as a drummer myself, some of this stuff, I can't say that it's conscious. It's just kind of how I play. Sometimes just playing for so many years, I just start to throw ghost notes into everything that I do. So this is one of those things, though, that I'm really liking about actually playing the drums. It's getting me back and infusing my music with a little bit more of a realistic sound that when I usually program drums, I'll be honest, I get a little lazy and I just want that snare on the 2 and 4, right? And I don't usually always go into the nitty gritty of adding these little ghost notes, but it makes a huge difference. And the other thing you're probably noticing, hopefully you're noticing, is that I'm not really doing a lot of copying and pasting in terms of the fills and the drum loops and the turnarounds. And I'll show you just in this last chorus how many different sorts of just variations is that's happening within my drums. So one thing that I do notice with a lot of the tracks, especially the ones that I review, is through the syndicate, is that there's a lot of, oh, I got one drum loop and one fill. Let me just go ahead and use that every single time we have a drum fill. I mean, it's just a little bit lazy. It's a little bit that it makes your track not feel as live, as professionally produced as other producers. And this is not stuff that takes you, again, 4 hours extra to do. We're talking about 10, 15 minutes extra of work, but it's always these little tiny things that you can do, especially here with your drums, that'll get them to stand out above and beyond the competition. So get in the habit of when you're doing your loops, don't just find one, or fills rather, don't just find one fill where you have, snare, snare, tom, 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 cool. And then you just copy and paste that same fill every time you have a transition. Try to get creative, get some different ideas, experiment, and you might find some really cool things. That's what I notice, is that even the fills, some of the fills that I originally performed are still in this track, but a lot of these I programmed and kind of experimented with because I was like, I don't like the one that I did. Let me mess with it a little bit, which is so great and beautiful about MIDI, is that I can go back and redo this. Now, I did record the audio from the TD50, but it was really weird. The drums, first of all, the sound did not feel as impactful as Stephen Slate drums, so that was the biggest reason. But there was also this strange bleed through, which is like, I don't know how that's possible, but on the kick and snare tracks, I was hearing cymbals and other things going on, but it's like, it's all digital. Like I don't even have 8 different cables. I had one USB cable that's splitting it all out. So either it's in the settings or something, and maybe I haven't figured that out yet, but from what I've found so far, I haven't seen anybody online talk about this or how to fix that. So in the kick and the snare, there was some bleed through, which sometimes that's good, but in this case, it was adding way too much noise and it was just not working for me. So that's why I decided to go back to just having MIDI samples. But let me go ahead and play some of these loops and performances and fills that I have at the end. So you guys can hear there's a lot of variations, a lot of different things happening. I've also added some shakers. I found this nice, interesting loop. This is actually just all in Logic. Somebody was asking, is this all Logic? Yes, all of this stuff I built 100% within Logic. I love Logic Pro 10. I've been using Logic for years. Totally recommend it. And a lot of the stuff that I'm using, other than, well, not Stephen Slate, but the bass, a couple other instruments that I'm using are actually built in right with the stuff that comes with Logic. So they have some great sounds. It's just you got to learn how to use this stuff. That's really what it comes down to. And I have a little tambourine that kind of hits with the snare. Just add a little bit more, sparkle, I guess, to the chorus. Let's see if we can go through here. Let's start with the beginning then. So piano, believe it or not, is playing pretty much the same chord progression throughout the entire track, except for I just get louder on the chorus. I decided to throw these like reverse pianos in as a transition throughout the piece. So some of them, I have 2 different types. One that has a little bit more of I basically recorded the low and high octave notes, and then the other one actually included the full chord. So I have some variation with those. But so you guys hear, that's the progression for the verse. Right? Not too special. And then the chorus. I'm obviously not a piano player, so it probably could be a little bit more intricate and interesting than that. But basically, increasing the velocity, adding a low root note to the chords there. So just bringing more life to it, right? Just boosting it up a bit. And you really do feel this impact when the chorus hits from this this verse. And one of the reasons is just because of this piano, that is just velocity differences, right? So I've talked to you guys about that a lot. Having dynamics within your track. So it's not always just cranked up to 10 and the whole track is just going super loud. But in order for that chorus that you have to really pop and to really feel impactful and big, it means you got to bring the part right before it down, right? Less is more. You don't have to have a lot going on here. I mean, in the beginning of this, I have this kind of interesting loop, which came from, I think it was Evolve Mutations. Is this weird loop, really cool sound. It almost sounds like a guitar and a piano hybrid, sort of a weird thing. It actually was only in one key, though. I ended up changing the key of the song, so I actually had to pitch shift this and speed it up because I actually increased the speed of the track as well. But that's why this other one, this is where the sound came from, this one right here, and I ended up bouncing it down to audio and manipulating it. But I like the sound of this with the piano. It just really adds this kind of cool texture. One's just doing the same ding, 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 the same time through, all the way through, and then the piano chords are changing, and so that's what adding this kind of really interesting contrast as these 4 chords go along. Simple kicks. That's the only thing I added there. added these real simple plucks with the guitar going right down the center. I have a little bit of a delay on them. And then we just start really getting in with those toms. And then these claps. I'm listening to these claps now, and I kind of don't want them on. They're on an off beat right now. I maybe want to just keep them a little bit more, you know, kind of on the 2 and the 4. But we'll see. I've actually frozen everything right here just to make sure that this, especially when I live stream, I kind of eat up a lot of computer space. So I'm not going to go through and make changes here. But, you know, it's not a lot of changes happening. But basically, every time we repeat this original piano progression, we've got some new element, something driving it forward a little bit more. And then when we get into the chorus, it's the first time you're going to hear the bass. We have some acoustic guitar that come in, and then we have obviously those big impactful piano where I increase the velocity, add that low note, and of course the drums now are sort of opening up and becoming the beat for this chorus. So that's why this feels like a much bigger section that just comes in. Something simple as that, right? I don't have any swoosh, no sound effects, nothing. I just have a pause. Dun, 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 pop, boom, right? Sometimes just having a little rest like that, a quarter note rest, can actually make your chorus impactful and actually make that downbeat hit much harder than it would have if you just dun, 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 boom, right? So don't underestimate the power of sometimes just cutting all of your music out and just having this nice little end. And I wanted to have that big snare hit right there. Came up in the chorus, so now we need to have the contrast, right? We need to come back down. Now this time, the reason why I have actually 2 bass tracks is because one of them I added an arpeggiator to because I'm lazy. So usually in this track, what I was noticing is that the bass is just boom, 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 just steady 8th notes, and it's not really doing much else, and I kind of like just like that forward momentum that it's providing. So I actually, rather than having to, you know, perform all of these 8th notes, I actually just have, I'll show you. See if I can find the extra section here. You can see it. They're actually just pretty much whole notes, you know, these longer notes, but because of the arpeggiator, it comes across as 8th notes. So anyways, that's what's, I misspoke. No, this wasn't a built-in bass sound. This is actually from a, this is from Shreddage Bass, one of the plugins I have for Contact 5. Highly recommend it. Sounds good. But there's a lot of great bass sounds. I don't want to discount Logic. It's definitely got some great bass sounds. But this one, I guess I didn't use it. I thought I did. And the second bass track is one where, especially in this second verse where we're coming down in intensity, I don't want that 8th note pattern, and so in order to create, basically I could have bypassed it. Sometimes you get issues though where you're going from a arpeggiator to not having an arpeggiator, and sometimes it doesn't catch, and so it's kind of weird. Usually what I do is I'll just duplicate it, and now on this track I don't have the arpeggiated plugin on there, and so when I have these long notes, and then we have these long acoustic guitars. These acoustic guitars, basically, I programmed them through Orange Tree samples on Contact 5. So a great library. Definitely, you guys check it out. It eats up a lot of my memory, so I end up going and programming it, and then I bounce it down to audio. And I've definitely duplicated here. I actually have one on the hard left, one on the hard right, and I delay the one on the hard right. I think I delayed them both, but on one on the hard right, I delayed 14 ticks here. You can see up here. And that's to give it actually more stereo spread. I'll show you what happens when you don't do that, and you can run into phase issues. So if I had this at 0, see, I can unfreeze probably 2, and it won't make a big difference. Let's see if I can show you guys here. And you might have to have headphones to kind of really hear this, or if you're in your studio, you'll be able to hear this. But if I don't have any delay on either, this is what it sounds like. Watch what happens when I delay one. You should have heard them kind of jump out apart from each other, right? They kind of spread out. So that's one of those things that I do when I want a more of a stereo image. And obviously, if you don't do that delay, you can run into some phasing issues because you have the same exact sample playing and you can cancel things out and it can sound a little wishy-washy and all that kind of stuff. So you want to get away from all that. So I try to make sure I avoid that problem. But back to the second verse here. Obviously, we've cooled things down. You get these long strums with the acoustic guitar, and then we build it back up into our pre-chorus, basically, before the second chorus. Strings. There was a question about backwards piano. Basically what you do, let's say you wanted to actually unfreeze this one. I can show you guys on this side. So this is how you do it in Logic. I mean, every DAW is going to allow you to reverse audio. It's sort of a built-in thing with every program. But let's say I wanted to take this chord and it's pretty quiet actually on my end, but let's say I wanted to reverse it. Basically what you do is you separate it so it's its own little section, right? See, it's separated from this. So like now it's connected. Everything's connected. What I do is whatever I want to have a chord that I reverse, I usually will cut it so that it's its own little MIDI section, right? You see how it's different than this one? And then in Logic, you can just bounce in place. Basically, that's all you got to do. So it bounces. It'll actually create a new track. Super simple like that. So now you got your piano. And all you got to do is you double click it. You go to File. This is a weird new thing with Logic Pro 10. On 9, it didn't have this. It was just with File. But you have to click on this File tab in the center. See how it comes up naturally as track. You click on File. You go to Functions, and then you go to Reverse right here. And I guess there's no keyboard shortcut for it. I always just find it this way. And once you reversed it, it sounds like this. Oh, you're not going to hear it because I'll explain that in a second here. This is what it sounds like. Pretty cool, right? Very, very, one of my favorite transitional effects that I like to use on a lot of stuff. So, especially with guitars, electric guitars, if you're about to go into a cool big chorus and you got that nice suspending chord right before the chorus hits, get that reverse or feedback or anything like that. It just is a nice, cool little touch. Since we're here, and the reason why you didn't hear anything is because what I do also, because you guys know I have this last chord that ends the track. I've actually automated the end of it. So rather than going through and automating every single one of these, I did automate the, this is that kind of weird piano guitar sound that I did sort of automate down. But I could not do that. I could just have it playing the whole time through. I just didn't want that sound to be ringing through. But what I do is I always add a, this is my master track actually here. And so what I'll do is I'll add this to my session. In order to do that, all you have to do is find your, this is my master right here. And you just right click on it and create a track. And now you have a track where you can actually automate your entire song from this one master track. So if you wanted like your whole track to get, you know, super quiet right here or something for whatever reason, transition, right? You guys can see you can mess with anything. You can throw cool, you can pan things. You know, don't get too crazy with it. Obviously, you want to make sure that your track is just kind of chugging along. So this is where you can kind of, having this many options with your entire mix can be your enemy because you can get a little too creative and a little too wild and out there with it. So just be careful about what you're doing with it. But it's absolutely a powerful tool, especially for, you know, fade outs at the end of your track, just to get everything to kind of all simmer down to the same amount simultaneously. It's definitely what I do recommend it for sure. Was there anything else with that? I don't think so. Let's go ahead into the second chorus. I think that's where we were. Nothing crazy, nothing spectacular, but it just adds a nice little interest, a little lift to it. And I wanted something, again, new that you haven't heard before, right? You haven't heard these strings at all in the track. So this kind of elevates our second chorus into a higher place and a more energetic place than we've heard. So again, following the principle of building as you go through the track, right? The track needs to evolve, it needs to build as you progress with it. I don't need to give them another chorus. Again, the same chorus copied and pasted. Why? They can take this chorus and copy and paste this chorus as many times as they want. I want to give them a sort of secondary option here, right? And on the third one, you guys heard the guitar lead that comes in. This was actually a vocal, whoops, I won't do that, a vocal melody that I had in my head. This was when I woke up one morning, I had this whole melody kind of just playing in my head. This was what I started with this lead sound and these chords and everything. And so I just decided, well, for now, I'll throw a guitar in there, but I am sort of flirting with the idea of maybe working with either myself. I'm not a great singer, so that's where I'm like, I don't know. But I do have a really strong, you guys know how it is when you have like a really strong melody and a really strong idea you really want to get across. And sometimes you just know that this track needs to have vocals. It needs to have that sort of story be told on top of it. So we'll see. I'm still kind of playing with that idea and we'll see what happens. But regardless, whether I put this in a library or I just keep it to just put it out online or even just keep it to myself, I'm still following the same exact guidelines. And that's what's so cool about TV licensing is it's taught me to be a much better producer. I was not doing this stuff when I first got started producing music. I just literally found my 4-bar phrase, looped it 1,000 times and called myself a producer. That's not really producing, okay? You're making beats and you can make some underbeds and that kind of thing and throw it to a rapper or a vocalist to maybe sing on top of it. But if you want to be a composer, a producer, I guess you call us more producers, not necessarily composers, but producers that really have a track that tells a story that has an emotional start and finish. This is the kind of stuff it's got to be just built in, right? When you open up your DAW, you just don't put, copying and pasting and looping your way through the track is just no longer an option for you, right? You got to step up your game, especially for this business. So here's our little bridge breakdown where it's very quiet, not a lot going on. I think as I was listening to this before, I definitely need some more development here for this bridge. Build up, probably need a little bit more to it, but got my reverse piano as usual. I don't know why that came down. That shouldn't have been coming down. It must be just an error when I was copying and pasting things over. I do have a lot of automation you guys will check out here. I'll talk about that in my last chorus. This one also, some strange things are happening there. But basically just have a little build with the guitar sound. I have a build, I have this bass that actually comes in just to add a nice little low growl to it. Is that I have a call and response happening with my lead guitar and my strings. So another really common issue I have with a lot of songs and production music that I come across is noise, and there's competing lead things happening, right? So you got a piano and a guitar and string, you got all this stuff and it's all competing in the same frequency range. And so it starts to sound a lot like noise, and we don't want to make noise. We want to make music, right? And one way to combat that is you can do some automation stuff here, which I'll show you. And I usually go to the call and response formula because in music, it's in every genre. It's one of those things that's just transcended through the ages. And call and response is one of those great ways where you can have one thing take the lead and then it backs off and something else comes in and takes the lead, especially if you have competing instruments like this. So as you can see, try to make it a little more obvious here. And all I want you guys to do, and I'll actually move this if I can, is just look at the lead guitar and my strings. So basically the lead guitar comes in, this is taking the lead. Look at what I did to the string automation. I bumped it down. Make it even way more obvious for you guys. There you go. That should be obvious, right? So the strings are down when the lead guitar is in, and then when the lead guitar has this kind of fading note, which is this really long note, then I want the strings to kind of come back and take the focus again. it's either got to have something else. This is where I'm also hearing I need to make more change. It needs to elevate. Like I need either a high string, maybe some backing vocals. I need something that kind of elevates just this last part because it feels like it's not big enough. It can be even a little bit bigger. So that's one thing I'm definitely hearing. But as you guys can hear with that call and response approach, it allows you to have multiple things happening, but they're not stepping and stomping all over each other. It's a real common issue. I had that problem big time when I was first starting producing. Is I thought in order to get my track to sound bigger, I had to have more stuff. And I want you guys to take away from this that it's not about having more stuff, but about letting each element of your track have its own space and really be there for a really specific reason and purpose. Okay, and if you have multiple things trying to take the lead, it's almost like I always use the metaphor, the analogy of when you go to a play and there's actors that are talking and whatever, singing on stage. When two of them try to talk on top of each other and sing on top of each other, where do you look? It's kind of like it's just too much. So usually what you find is, this actor has a line, then that actor has a line, then this actor sings a line, and then that actor sings a line. So you always get this sort of spotlight effect where one person gets their little shine and then the attention shifts over to the other person. Same thing with music, is you don't want to have 3 or 4 different lead actors talking all over each other, right? And singing all over each other, because it starts to get really obnoxious. It's just really hard to listen to. It's hard to get sucked into the music. So you need to make sure that everything has its spot and its place. And if it's the lead, let it be the lead, and everything else needs to be supporting that, right? So that if that means muting or coming down a little bit on the EQ, let's say your acoustic guitars are too bright and they're kind of stomping a little bit all over your lead guitars, and you need to dampen those acoustic guitars a bit, or vice versa, whatever it is. So you need to make sure that everything has its space. So hopefully that explains to you guys my personal approach with it. I think that's pretty much it. I wonder if there's anything else. See down here, these are my experimental vocal lines. I'm not going to show you guys those today, but I'm kind of messing with some stuff down there, and we'll see what comes of that. I'm going to fix that. I don't like that ringing out so much. Kind of bring it back to where it was before. There you go. That just feels a little bit better to me. I like that sound kind of fading out with the rest of the track. So anyways, guys, that's what I'm working on. I hope this was helpful and useful for you guys. I'm going to let you go, let you get back to your tracks and your productions. So use this as inspiration, as a guideline if you'd like to. We'll see where this track goes. I'll definitely keep you guys updated and let you know if I'm going to throw vocals on this, or what I'm going to do. Maybe just throw it to one of my TV film library partners or contacts. We'll see. But again, I do want you guys to remember that even myself, I'm not 100% just doing production music every single day. Like once in a while, I probably should do this more often. It's definitely one of those things where just let your creative energy just come out once in a while. Allow yourself to it's almost like just playtime, right? You get into the sandbox. It doesn't have to be for a library. It doesn't have to be for a TV show. It's just for you, right? And this allows your creativity to get sparked again, to allow you to kind of tap into your roots again, because it's one of those sort of downsides of the TV film licensing business is that, because I've definitely been there, where you get into sort of production beast mode where it's fun. It's very rewarding to crank out a bunch of music, but it can start to feel a little bit robotic, and it doesn't feel very creative at some point, because you really do figure out your sort of formula for how to get accepted and get your placements, which is really cool. But once you sort of have it down, you got to challenge yourself at some point. You can't just be like a artificially intelligent robot, just stacking basically the same kind of blocks over and over again. That gets really boring. That starts to really feel stale creatively. So doing stuff like this and just putting yourself out there, or even just doing it for yourself, there's nothing wrong with just putting out a cool track that you're feeling and you're loving, or cranking out a track, and it can stay with you. It doesn't have to go anywhere. You can show it to your friends and family. You can just stay in your studio, but definitely dedicate yourself and have that selfishness that you do need to tap into yourself, tap into your own creativity from time to time. It's just a really healthy thing to do, and it's going to do better for your career in the long run. Trust me, because this is where I usually find that burnout phase, is when I haven't done this for a long time. I get a little bit just more this, more of that. Okay, you want more EDM pop music? Okay, you know, that kind of thing where you're just doing the same thing repetitively. It's great, you know, that you get successful, but this is really important too. You got to add this to your sort of schedule in some fairly regular manner. It could be once a month, once every 2 months. You know, you kind of make that choice of what works for you. So anyways, guys, hope you guys enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. Now get back to work. It's Saturday, it's Sunday, so you guys should have a lot of stuff you should be doing and working on. And I hope you guys do, you know, enjoy this. So we'll talk soon. If you enjoyed it, please obviously leave a like, do subscribe. I do live videos, not always like this every single week, but I do live videos fairly consistently, talking about the TV film licensing business. So welcome. If you're new to the channel, I hope you guys enjoy these videos.